welcome each of you to our Wednesday night devotional time. That's kind of what we've narrowed it down to. For those of you that are joining us at home, welcome. We are glad that you're with us tonight. And if you don't know what takes place here from 7 o'clock until this time at 7:15, it's what we have our time for prayer requests. We share prayer requests within the congregation, and we have special announcements and kind of update everyone on what's going on in the life of the church. So if you're missing that, then you could come and join us here, have a great meal from 5:30 on if you'd like to be a part of that. But also remember that all of our activities are listed through our website, or you can find us on social media, I am certain. Did have an opportunity to visit with a family today in Zephyr Hills, just wonderful folks. What came up in the conversation also came up at our senior luncheon yesterday, and it was the discussion of the latest fad, if you will, in political correctness in America. The concept of wokeism. Anybody heard of that? Oh my. Yes, there we go, a head or two shaking. Some people don't want to acknowledge it because they're not really sure they know what it is. I'm not sure I know what it is. I know what I read about it. And I would imagine that if you ask 6 different people what it is, you get 6 different responses, most likely. But there are a lot of common threads, a lot of common denominators if you begin to research it and break it down. And I'm prepared to call it a new religion. And I think that's what it's going to amount to. And it's really moving through our country like a tidal wave. I think every facet of Western culture either has been or will be affected by this in some means or manner. It is, in many aspects, redefining who we are and what we are in America. And it masquerades under the guise of compassion and justice. But folks, underneath, from everything that I can read and that other godly people are sharing, is that it's an evil ideology, and it is totally incompatible with who we are as Christians, and it's a dangerous thing that's taking place. Now, when many talk about being woke or wokeism, if you will, and I encourage you to look up the meaning. We have time tonight, I'll share with you some definitions of it. But a lot of folks contribute it back to the time of the George Floyd killing in Minneapolis on that fateful day last year, which started the rioting and et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of folks think that was the beginning of it, but it's not. That was what would many call a watershed moment, if you will. But this is something that's been around for a long time, but it's been hiding. It's been creeping in, just like a fungus would creep in slowly, and then all of a sudden it gets exposed because it's overtaking everything. And that's really what we're dealing with. And I think that it will fast become a religion, if you will. And it will, I think, if left unchecked, it will destroy the Western culture of Christianity that we have known in America. Now, it's not going to destroy Christianity. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. Christianity will remain strong. We always have, because our leader wins. But it will take away much of what has been built up for Christianity as we know it in our country. This wokeness is attuned to political correctness. This was the buzzword that we used for so long. I've used that buzzword for a couple of years, political correctness, and a lot of these terms. We're now hearing the term cancel culture, and I'm sure you're familiar with that if you follow social media or the news and what's happening with all of that. And honestly, let me just pause and say, if you're not up to speed on all of this, you need to get up to speed. Because Christians cannot ignore what's going on in the world, because it's going to affect us. It's going to affect our ability to share the love of Christ to others. So we have a responsibility to be informed. Just seek multiple sources and sources that you trust before you settle in on what you think is true or perhaps untrue. But it's going to unravel much of what Christianity has done if we are not careful. And whether they call it political correctness or cancel culture or wokeness or wokeism, what it really amounts to is a brand of Marxism. And that's something that we don't want. Now, we talk a lot about socialism coming in, and there are many socialists within our government that want to take America to become a socialist nation. And we certainly don't want that either, because in every country where socialism has dominated, it's failed. It does not work. But what we're seeing here is not just socialism. There are issues that it borders on that certainly bear thought and consideration. But there's something else. In fact, there's a couple other descriptors. Identity politics. Some people refer to it as identity politics today, or some talk about it as being social justice. And all of these have their places. Critical theory is another one. You've heard about critical race theory. Well, critical theory, that's a whole different aspect, but they're all in tune. They all capture much of what this movement is all about. But I truly believe it will become a religion as religions go. A cult, if you will, you could call it that, but cults are usually small in nature. And this has the potential of becoming very, very large. And we've seen that just in what has happened in America already through the riots, the demonstrations, all of this that's taking on. And I think if you research it, I hope you will, research the history of these terms, not just political correctness, but in particular the terms of critical theory and the wokeism, where it came from, how it all started, because that'll give you a better understanding of how, even from its inception, it's been perverted, which is usually what happens with most of these things. They may start out with something good, but they end up becoming morphed into something that is not good. It was the early 1900s, I mentioned critical theory, when the term critical theory first came about. And it was more of a social philosophy, if you will. If you could kind of encapsulate it, it was designed to critique culture. And it was designed to challenge the power structures of society. And in fact, the terminology, the definition that was given to critical theory was to liberate human beings from the circumstances that enslaved them. Well, now, in essence, that may sound good, but what it amounted to is that there are two factions that exist in the world according to critical theory, and one is the oppressed and the other is the oppressor, and you're either one or the other. And the only things that exist, according to this critical theory from the early 1900s, mind you, was that there are hierarchies of power, and those hierarchies must be torn down. That's what it's all about, is tearing it down. Now, if we were to stop there, I would say there's some hierarchies in our government I'd like to see torn down, because there's too much control, there's too much power. But this was total destruction. Is what the critical theory was all about. And it migrated into our universities, into our school systems, and certainly into our public school system now. And so much is taking place that we've really not paid attention to, because, again, it's been creeping. It's been that fungus that's been growing. It's like the Trojan horse coming in, and all of a sudden the doors open on the horse, and all these little evils are getting out. It's become part of our media structure. It's become part of our corporate culture. Because when you think about it, most of this entered into our universities from I would say from the late 80s and certainly in the early 90s. And those leaders, if you will, or those that are in our media concept now, they're the ones that graduated from those universities that were teaching that. So all of these people have been indoctrinated to this critical theory culture, if you will. So it's not surprising that so many of them think of it that way, and they're totally bought into it. Sadly. So it's something that's really surrounding us. And again, if America's not careful, this will become the new culture in America. You hear a lot about Western civilization and Western culture as opposed to the Eastern, those kinds of things. Well, the Western culture that we grew up with and we've enjoyed will soon be disappearing if we are not careful. Now, it's not just a political movement, and it's not just a social movement. When you think about what political movements are and social movements are, there's much more to it than that, which is why I encourage you to study it, learn about it, and at least become familiar with it. They take ideas such as individualism, hard work, punctuality, delayed gratification, which means we don't need the reward right now. We can accept that later. But they take those terms and they have now made that into what they call white supremacy. And all of these terms, sometimes we just throw them off as being nothing. But every one of these terms has meaning to these groups. And they want to see these terms become mainstream. And critical theory is the one that is driving it more so than anything else that we're seeing. They view concepts such as science and reason from a responsible mind. They label those as tools of the oppressive white patriarchy. Now, and you might say, well, now, preacher, we're not going to get into a race situation. No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm trying to expose what these people are trying to get our culture to believe. And it's scary. And the end result, if left unchecked, would be the complete dismantling and rebuilding of Western culture in America. It's evil, it's dangerous, and we need to be aware of it. If for no other reason, that we can pray that God will intervene some way, somehow. So we're right out of time, and I've probably just whet your appetite, and I could go on for a long time talking about this stuff. But I encourage you to don't just take what I say. Go check it out. But use multiple sources. Find reliable sources. Look to some of our Christian leaders of the day and see what they're having to say about it, because I believe that most of them are on top of it, and I think we'll see a lot more information, good information coming out about it in the days that are ahead. All right then. Well, that is our time for this evening. A couple of minutes maybe we have. Did we have any new prayer requests come in? Some more folks came in. Any new prayer requests that we missed that we just need to? Okay. You may have unspoken requests, and if you do, I invite you to lift those to the Lord at this time. All right. Well, let's go to the Lord in prayer. Danny, I see you back there. Would you pray for us, Danny?